Alien's first foray into the realms of virtual reality, Alien Rogue Incursion, released on Steam VR and PlayStation VR 2 back in December of 2024. A third version of the game, which runs natively within the headset hardware of the MetaQuest 3, was delayed until yesterday, February 13th, 2025. Survios had said they needed some extra time to get this version right. The MetaQuest 3 headset is the successor to the legacy of the Oculus Rift, which Meta acquired back in 2014 before the first generation consumer model of the Oculus Rift even released. I'd never used a MetaQuest headset until my visit to developer Survios last November to try a demo of Rogue Incursion. For that demo, the MetaQuest 3 was connected to a PC with a cable, so the game was being run using PC hardware. I was really impressed with what I played of that demo, and when the game did release, we quite enjoyed it. More recently, Survios invited us back out to their offices for a press and influencer event to try out the fully untethered version of the game. Being quite curious about this version, I ventured back out to Southern California to give it a shot. Upon entering the Survios building, it was completely different to how I remembered from my previous visit. The whole space was transformed into the dark and spooky facility of Castor's Cradle on Perdan. This themed space and just how well put together the production was ended up being the real highlight of my visit. So I'll be talking about that after sharing my thoughts on the demo that I played. So how does the MetaQuest version stack up? Honestly, from what I experienced, not very well. Keep in mind this is not a full review of this version, but this was the same segment of Alien Rogue Incursion I played through during my first visit to Survios, in a section I had become more familiar with from playing the game on release. It was just running on different hardware. Right after putting on the headset and entering the demo, I could tell that graphically this was a significantly scaled back version of the game. The resolution overall seemed lower, the frame rate wasn't buttery smooth like I was used to from the PSVR 2 version, and things even got a bit choppy. I couldn't really make out the dynamic shadows in the game. It seemed like they had been either reduced or completely cut from this version. As I made my way through this corridor sequence with Davis 01, the xenomorphs attacked. When this activity started happening, I noticed a wave of pixelation which appeared, seemingly to maintain the frame rate during this high-action sequence. Continuing down the hallways, there was another differing element I noticed. Everything was very blue, much more so than what I was used to. There was a thick draw-distance haze which appeared more as a fog of war than anything else. Seemingly gone was the volumetric fog that so impressed me in the PSVR 2 version. So much of the immersive experience of Alien Rogue Incursion relies on the incredible atmosphere. It's a huge part of the game's appeal for me as an Alien fan, and the MetaQuest 3 version unfortunately just doesn't measure up to how the game should be experienced. It's not all bad though. I will say, though I consider the PSVR 2 version to be the best way to experience the game, given its impressive graphics and that it's the only version with haptic vibration in the headset itself, the MetaQuest 3 is the most comfortable VR headset I've tried. It's also an incredibly crisp image when playing with the headset while it's tethered. If you have a gaming PC that meets the recommended specs, I'd highly recommend using your MetaQuest 3 headset to play the PC VR version of the game, as you'll be getting a much more visually impressive experience. Apparently, a significant patch is coming next week to address some of these issues with the Quest version. If you have a MetaQuest 3 headset and use it natively and without a gaming PC, I imagine you'll still be able to have a decent experience with Alien Rogue Incursion. However, after having been completely spoiled from playing the PSVR 2 version, I can only really recommend the native MetaQuest 3 version if it's your only avenue for experiencing VR games, and you really want to play Rogue Incursion. It just feels like the hardware is barely hanging on with this game. Hopefully once Meta eventually releases their next headset, we'll be able to have a completely untethered experience that is visually on par with the PSVR 2 and PC VR. Either that, or fingers crossed Survios can improve the optimization for this version with further patches. Now, as far as my visit itself goes, I gotta hand it to Survios. They put on a fantastic event for this demo. I've always loved alien attractions and theme spaces. They're the one thing that can be more immersive than VR itself for me with this franchise. Right when I entered the building, I passed a black curtain into a dark space. After I was checked in, I had a look around this dark and moody entrance area. The classic alien alarm siren was blaring, red warning lights were going off, and a gigantic monitor was swaying back and forth as it displayed the Gemini Exoplanet Solutions logo and various other imagery. Tubes were chaotically strewn across the ceiling, and one of the larger ones was dripping neon green slime, Kenner style. I continued into a scare hallway set like an industrial space with thick mist covering the floor. Ahead was a monitor displaying camera feeds from the facility. I was surprised by a survivor, or scare actor, behind some barrels, scratch marks strewn across his face. He got my attention by telling me, "It got loose, check the monitor." I obliged and examined the screen, and then a facehugger shot out of a mist-filled case and gave me a good scare. After exiting this hallway, I passed through some stripped curtains, flanked by alarm klaxon lights, and into the main waiting area. This larger room was awesome, really evoking the feel of a facility in the midst of a xenomorph outbreak. While I was waiting for my time slot to play through the demo, I enjoyed conversations with some of the folks around. There was a representative from the Walt Disney Archives who told me that the eggs on display were actual props used in the film Alien Covenant. There was a bar sporting the Gemini Exoplanet Solutions logo and featuring alien-themed cocktails, as well as some awesome-looking alien-themed hors d'oeuvres. I couldn't help but think of the Disney shill accusations I was putting myself at risk of while I enjoyed these. To be honest though, I wish there were more alien-themed experiences like this for the public. Predator cosplayer who goes by Aussie Huntress suggested an alien-themed nightclub. I mean, how cool would that be? You've done it with Star Wars, Disney. In the back of this room was a large frosted window which showed the shadows of xenomorphs, facehuggers, and hapless humans trying and failing to survive. These shadows were using the same models from the game. Another facehugger was projected onto the wall, emerging from an egg. It reared up before scurrying away. In the center of the room was more dripping slime into an acid-burned drum. One of the tubes even shook as I could hear a facehugger scuttering through. Not even the bathroom was safe. It was filled with red warning lights, and after the door closed, an air cannon gave me another jump scare. This was just a top-tier level atmospheric space, and I really have to hand it to creative director Steven Peterson and his team at Clove for putting this together. We're planning to have him on the podcast soon to actually discuss this topic of themed spaces. So while the demo itself was unfortunately not at the quality I was hoping for, the journey out to LA was totally worth it, just to vibe out in the space for a bit. I also had the opportunity to talk a bit more with Eugene Elkin, the game's director and lead software engineer. We'll be looking to have some folks from Survios on the podcast soon to discuss Alien Rogue Incursion in more detail. A big thanks to them again for the invite out to this really great event. From AVP Galaxy, this is Ridgetop, signing off.